Hi, I'm Ruby Jones, and you're listening to 7am. Australia's plan to ban teenagers from social media has been called world-leading.
Well, a world first in Australia, where Parliament there has given a green light to a bill banning social media for users under the age of 16.
Once introduced, the new legislation could see tech companies like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram fined up to 50 million Australian dollars. That's almost 31 million euros if they fail to comply.
But as we get closer to its introduction, questions are being raised about what it actually means to verify age on social media and the implications for online privacy for all internet users. Today, digital rights advocate Samantha Floreani on the risks of the ban amid a global regulatory arms race.
It's Sunday, November 30. This episode was originally published in July.
So, Samantha, we'll get into the details of the social media ban in a moment, but first, it seems like YouTube will now be included in this ban. Originally, it was not going to be. So what's changed?
Yeah, so initially YouTube was excluded from the teen social media ban, which made a lot of the other social media giants really upset. They were really angry about this. But in June, the e-Safety Commissioner made a speech to the National Press Club where she revealed that she had advised the Minister for Communications, Annika Wells, that the government should not exempt YouTube from the ban.
YouTube was the only one exempted. Our recommendation was that no specific platform be exempted because, as I said, the relative risks and harms can change at any given moment.
And this was off the back of research that her office had conducted, which revealed that YouTube was one of the most used platforms by children under 16 years of age.
YouTube was the most frequently cited platform in our research, with almost 4 in 10 children reporting exposure to harmful content there.
And the research also included some findings about a younger cohort of users, so ages 10 to 12, who were more likely to be exposed to harmful content on YouTube.
This also comes as the New York Times reported earlier this month that YouTube surreptitiously rolled back its content moderation processes to keep more harmful content on its platform.
So it seems that essentially the backflip has come off the back of advice from the e-Safety Commissioner based on this research.
Okay, and so what do we know then, Samantha, about how YouTube and its owner, Google, how they're likely to respond?
Well, we can already see that they've been quite aggressive in their response.
YouTube is galvanising Aussie creators, though, to respond. You worried about them?
YouTube did send the Wiggles to try and persuade me to their position.
Did they?
They did. They sent Big Wiggle, and obviously
Google, which owns YouTube, threatened legal action in a letter to the communications minister.
Look, you worried about legal action?
I mean, we have had threats come in, but look, I've got sharp elbows. This is too important for us not to have a crack.
So it'll be interesting to see if they, make good on that threat. They've been arguing pretty strongly that YouTube is not a social media platform. Basically, what they're saying is that it lacks some of the features designed to facilitate social connections in the same way that many other social media platforms do. Whether or not you agree with that, that's sort of the stance that they've been really trying to push. They've also been pushing this idea that, YouTube is home to a lot of educational content, it's regularly used in Australian classrooms and so on. So it will be interesting to see whether there's fallout off the back of this.
And so the Australian government, they're really relying on this argument that YouTube contains all of the same harms to young people, like algorithms, autoplay, those sorts of things, and that's why it should be included. What does the evidence say about the harm or otherwise of YouTube on young people?
In general, there is a lot of conflicting research and evidence on all social media fronts. You can find research that suggests that social media is overwhelmingly beneficial. You can find research that suggests it's, absolutely terrible. I think in reality, it's always going to be more complicated than that. there are plenty of positives that come with something like YouTube. You know, plenty of teachers use it in classrooms, plenty of parents use it with their children. So I think where we get into trouble is if we start to try to categorize these things as all good or all bad. But, you know, as the research shows from the e-safety commissioner, there are harms that are occurring on YouTube. And, you know, I think it is reasonable to demand social media giants to be taking more proactive steps to ensure that their products are, you know, safer experiences for children and young people, but people of all ages as well, to be honest. There is, I guess, an outstanding question as to whether age verification is the best option for that. But this is the one that we're currently entertaining.
Okay, well, let's talk about the nuts and bolts of the social media ban. How would it, or does it actually work in practice?
Yeah, so from December, the social media platforms that are captured by Part 4A of the Online Safety Act will have to take reasonable steps to prevent people under the age of 16 from having accounts on their platforms. So most social media platforms already have a minimum age requirement of 13, but the way that they enforce this is really sort of lackluster and quite ineffective. You know, it's usually just asking people to put in their date of birth. Obviously, this is not working. So from December, they'll be expected to do much more to verify that their users are actually over the age of 16.
Come 10 December, it means that if your kid has a YouTube login or another social media platform login, the platform needs to deactivate it. And the platform needs to take reasonable steps to make sure that kids don't activate new logins. And when they find their way around this, because we know that kids will, God bless them, the platforms take reasonable steps to mitigate that from happening and to correct errors.
Unfortunately, we still don't know exactly what this will look like in practice for everyday users of social media. And that's because there are a range of options that platforms could take to do this. On Wednesday, Communications Minister Annika Wells did make assurances that platforms will not be required to collect identity documents like a passport or a driver's license in order to do this.
Platforms have to provide an alternative to providing your own personal identification documents to satisfy themselves of age.
For instance, they might get people to put in their credit card details, or they might use biometric face scanning to guess the age of the person based on their face. And she suggested that some platforms, you know, might be able to infer people's age based on the data that they already have about them.
These platforms know with deadly accuracy who we are, what we do, and when we do it. And you know, they know that you've had a Facebook account since 2009, so they know that you're over 16. There's lots of ways that this can be done.
But something that's important to understand, I think, about this is that this will change the way that everyone uses social media, you know, not just people under the age of 16. Everyone, including adults, will need to verify their age in whatever way they end up doing this, not just children.
After the break, how the internet is changing for everyone. Samantha, if everyone who uses the internet is going to end up having to provide some sort of identification, even if we don't know exactly what that is yet, how will that change the way that we all use the internet?
Yeah, so again, it will depend on how it's implemented, but there are some immediate concerns that come to mind, one of which is privacy and data protection or digital security. So if we are required to provide additional data to these tech giants or to third-party age assurance platforms, that does mean handing over, you know, more information to companies that already have a huge amount of information about us. I think people are more aware than ever of the risks that come with providing things like identity documents or other sensitive and personal information off the back of, you know, all of these large-scale data breaches. I think people are rightfully so quite scared about what that means. There are also concerns about the potential to be able to essentially link your behaviour on social media or other, you know, online services and websites to your identity. Again, we don't know, because we don't know the specifics of how it will be implemented, whether this is likely to happen or not, but there are, I think, genuine fears and reasonable fears about the potential for this to essentially contribute to a global trend towards policing online content and being able to monitor the way that people are accessing various forms of information online. And something else that I think is important to note is that it's not just going to be happening on social media. Search engines in December will also be expected to verify the age of their logged-in users.
And what is the rationale for that?
This is kind of happening in tandem to the teen social media ban. Basically, there's a set of new industry codes that are also coming into effect in December that would mean that search engines will also have to verify users' age. The e-safety commissioner has basically said that, there needs to be a layered approach and that they want to come at it from all different directions, and that the idea being that search engines are sort of one entry point into potentially harmful material.
And the UK has just started age verification for pornography, I believe. What can we learn from how that's going?
Yeah, so the UK within the last week has brought in new stringent regulations that mean that any website offering adult content to UK users needs to take reasonable steps to verify the age of anyone visiting that website from the UK. So very similar kind of approach to what we're doing here in Australia. So off the back of this, there's been more than 400,000 UK citizens have signed a parliamentary petition demanding that the Act be repealed, which I think suggests that quite a few people were perhaps taken by surprise about what it meant in reality and are really upset about it. In addition to that, a popular VPN product, so a VPN basically enables people to bypass this age verification process by masking their location so they can essentially pretend to be logging in from somewhere that isn't the UK. So a popular VPN product said that they've seen more than an 18,000% increase in daily signups from UK-based users since Friday. So that's a massive uptick in people using VPNs to get around these restrictions. So again, that suggests that a lot of people are actively trying to get around it and that it's quite easy to get around using a VPN, which raises questions about the sort of efficacy of the whole thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that comes up a lot, right? Whether or not you can actually ban teenagers from using these platforms.
Exactly. The other thing that has been interesting to note off the back of the UK ban is that there's been lots of reporting about how there have been websites and smaller online forums, many of which are completely innocuous, not harmful to children, and they've opted to just geo-block their services to the UK entirely, simply because they don't have the resources to support third-party age verification and they can't risk the potential fines. So we might see a similar thing here where rather than having to deal with age verification or risk fines, that we might see, websites and forums just completely pull out of Australia.
And it's fair to say the rest of the world is watching this pretty closely?
Yeah, well, I think this is part of the global push to age-gate more and more of the internet. There's been a lot of emphasis on online safety of late. I think it's fair to say that there's kind of a bit of a regulatory arms race happening between, here and the UK in particular. I think it's entirely reasonable to demand digital platforms, social media platforms, all of these tech giants to be doing much more when it comes to, ensuring the safety of their users. So what's striking to me here is that there are, these are really big decisions that do change the way that everyone will use the internet, not just on social media. And, to me, this warrants much more robust public conversation and parliamentary debate.
Well, Samantha, thank you so much for your time.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. Tomorrow, I'm bringing you the story of a man who's blown the whistle on the monumental waste and alleged corruption happening at the Department of Home Affairs. This man took a job overseeing massive contracts for offshore processing, and he saw millions of dollars being wasted on deals no longer fit for purpose. But when he blew the whistle, no one listened.
Because I was a newcomer, because I'd come from the UN system, because I'd come from outside of public service, I just naturally walked around and asked these questions, because they were so fucking obvious. And people would literally stare at you like you had 3 fucking heads.
Tomorrow, the culture of secrecy and the silence that goes all the way to the top of Australia's offshore detention system.